Alright, it's next set stuff, which means the next set is already starting to be revealed. And so what kind of cards have we been seeing so far? What kind of decks might be evolving from this? And all of that and more is going to be coming at you right now. So with this most recent set, there's been a dual ink that has been going on, and it is going to be absolutely intense. And so this is going to be the very first time. So for those of you who might not know what a dual ink is, what that is going to consist of is 2 colors into 1 card. What that's going to mean is that you have to have an entire deck made of only those 2 colors. If something, for example, like the card above, is going to be a green-blue, you cannot just stick it in a green-red deck just because half of it happens to be green. Both colors must be met in the respective deck combination. And so, in order to play a blue-green card, you need to have a blue-green deck, and that is it. Now, with that being said, guys, we are going to be looking into some pretty interesting cards, especially Ink Geyser right here. This is going to be a very interesting play right here, and I believe this card could very well make some pretty intense switch ups in the meta, especially on the ramp side of things. Now, this is going to be really interesting too because it says for 3, it's uninkable, that you can go ahead and each player exerts all cards in their inkwell. Then each player with 3 or more cards in their inkwell returns cards at random from their inkwell to their hand until they have 3 cards in their inkwell. Now that's going to be a little bit tough to kind of, do the at random thing. Usually what that consists of is doing the die roll and whatnot, and still, even so, that's going to be a fairly annoying card that you're going to have to be going against. Now, why is that? Well, because for Ruby Sapphire, Ruby Amethyst, and things like that, that's going to be some interesting combinations that you could have going on with this. One of the things that you might be seeing with Ruby Sapphire is especially when they ramp all the way up to 6, 7, 8 ink, that, hey, by the way, sorry, dude, all that progression that you just had is going to go all the way down back to 3. Now, of course, at the same time, you're still going to be putting all of those cards back into your opponent's hands. And so is that necessarily a good thing, bad thing? It can vary just because, especially with Ruby Sapphire, they're wanting to get to the 6, 7, 8 ink, even 9 ink, or more, in order to be able to control the end game. And so this could be almost a Ruby Sapphire killer. Is it necessarily going to be? That's yet to be seen. I still think it is going to be a relevant deck combination for us as well, especially because even if you do happen to get up to 6, 7 ink, you're still able to, of course, build your board out. If you have a Maui Half Shark and whatnot, you can go ahead and take something out and go for another Sail the Azurite Sea. It will definitely slow you down, though, and this also makes a precedent for a more aggro type of meta that we might be seeing here. Now, again, is that yet to be seen? Yes, because of course, the set hasn't been really come out yet all that much, and there hasn't been a whole lot of diving into the decks that we could see. Now, with this deck in particular, this could be a very interesting combination because this could go pretty well in a Mufasa-style deck. Now, of course, the Mufasa will show it up on screen, but what the Mufasa is going to be doing is that when it comes in, of course, you're going to be returning 2 ink to your hand, and then the next turn, of course, when Mufasa goes ahead and quests, you are then able to untap all of your ink and then go ahead and utilize it all over again. So, you could do some pretty disgusting combinations with that as well, because you can ramp up as well with blue, and it's going to be putting cards back into your hand as well. And so you can go ahead with the Mufasa, you can quest with it, you can untap everything, you can set up your board even more, and then with your final 3 ink, you can go play ahead and play Ink Geyser to be able to get down to just 3 ink while you have your board pretty much built out and even now more cards in hand. So it's going to be interesting to see how this card net, kind of changes up the meta. It's interesting. And this could definitely be something that might be a difficult card to have to deal with, and we might even be able to see blue-green coming into the meta next set. Now, with that being said, This necessarily, if anything, is probably going to be helping Amber Steel. Amber Steel doesn't really need all that much ink necessarily to be able to have to do a whole lot. Now, that's the dangerous thing about this. Now, Ink Geyser necessarily would be almost a dead card against that kind of deck because, of course, you'll just be adding more cards, especially the ink that, that they might need to be able to get back into the game or get ahead of the game kind of thing. And so that can be a little bit dangerous for you to have to deal with. Still, though, again, I really do think this is going to be a Ruby Amethyst and maybe even a Ruby Sapphire to really make an impact against those kinds of decks. Imagine, even just going against a Ruby Amethyst deck, you build up your board, you notice that your opponent is at 6 ink, and a Be Prepared is probably going to be on board. So, you set up your board, and then again with your final 3 ink, you go ahead and play Ink Geyser. They go ahead and go right back down to 3 ink, and instead of getting the Be Prepared out turn 7, your board state is a lot safer. There's still a good chance, of course, that, something might get brawled or whatnot, but avoiding an entire board wipe is going to be very good, especially with this kind of deck. And this could be something that could really help slow down those decks that seem to be taking over, the late game. Even if someone is at 11 ink, yes, you are going to be giving them back a ton of cards doing so, but then being all the way back down to 3 ink, woo! And that's also going to be kind of the annoying part. If you go against a Ruby Sapphire player, you top deck into the late game, and they have 11 ink, and you have to randomly, give it back. You, of course, can shuffle. And then, you just randomly pick up, of course, that's an avenue that you can go down. Even still, though, it kind of can be a little bit of a time-consuming card. Not horribly, but enough to be annoying. But anyway, I am really interested to see what then is going to be coming of this card. And we've already seen some additional support for this color combination, and so I'm just curious to see what's going to be going on. Now, of course, we got in our next set, we got some things that are going to be coming around. We got some pet pals pounce into the realm. Now, with that being said, these guys, the aristocrats, kind of dead cards. There's nothing that's really going to be all that useful. Now, of course, Thomas O'Malley's, probably one of the only good cards here because he has Ward and he is a 4/2 for 3. That's not too bad. That can be kind of another that can be almost a better bonsai, necessarily, being able to attack in like that. Even still, though, it's not necessarily going to be all that great, but the 4/2 is rather nice. Now, and the ward that it can't be taken out like the bonsai can be pretty nice. Everything else, though, is kind of a joke of a card. One that I do like over here, though, is Marie, just because she has a 2-cost, a 1/2, which can be a very nice turn 2 play. And then whenever this character quests, you may give chosen character -2 attack this turn. And that can just be a really nice way to be able to attack into something, take no damage, and then go ahead and get some dominant gameplay right there. Now, Bolt is going to be really interesting here as well, just because we do see this color combination with the Bolt card that we are going to be talking about a little bit later, which means that he's going to be getting some pretty good support with this. Now, one thing that I really like here is this second Bolt. Now, of course, he is a 1/3, but one thing that I do enjoy about this is that whenever this character quests, if he has no damage, you may draw a card, then choose and discard a card. One thing that I really also find curious is that it is a 2-cost as well. And so, you could almost even go ahead, get him out turn 2, come in turn 3, quest with him, then even do his shift line because his shift is 3, if I remember correctly. And, then the other bolt has some pretty good attributes. Now, of course, Dr. Calico is going to be an interesting one as well, being that while this character has no damage, he gains resist +2. At a 4-cost, that's actually pretty good. And there's a lot of characters out there that only have, of course, the 2 damage. And so the fact that you're going to even be able to resist that, and then even on top of that, having a 3 damage that you're going to be able to deal back while characters are trying to take out Dr. Calico, that's going to be a pretty good one. It doesn't matter that he only quests for 1. You're not going to necessarily be using him to only quest for 1. So totally get it. Now, this Bolt is going to be really interesting too. He's a 2/4 quest for 2, and he has support. That's not going to necessarily be all that useful necessarily, and being a 4-cost with a 2, we saw for Genie, for example, that the 2 parameter was a little bit dangerous, just because if you went against Ruby Amethyst, you were going to be facing down brawls a lot, and it was a very easy way to be able to take out genies. And at the same time, there was also Zeus's and things like that. So the genies got taken out pretty hard this last meta, and we even saw people seeing it as one of probably the best cards, and it still is a great card. But at the same time, if that card gets taken out, the turn that it comes out before it is able to quest, even though it is evasive, you are losing out on a lot of potential right there, paying for just to be able to draw a card. And that's why also I don't think necessarily this bolt is going to necessarily be seeing a whole lot of action, just because it is a 2/4. It can quest for 2, and it does have support, but necessarily that's not something that's going to be groundbreaking in this meta. Now, this is going to be an interesting one too. Mittens, I don't necessarily, again, think that this is going to necessarily be a great card in this meta or in this next meta. It is pretty good because once during your turn, whenever a card is put into your inkwell, other characters with bodyguard get +1 ink this turn. Now, that's going to be interesting as well, just because of the fact that it does say whenever you put a card into your inkwell, your other characters with bodyguard get +1 per turn. Now, that's going to be an interesting ruling in that as well, because it should also count for cards in hand that have bodyguard as well. So if you do end up, even playing one after the fact with bodyguard, that's, going to be pretty solid. And then, of course, it is a reoccurring kind of thing. So anytime you do put anything into your inkwell per turn, you're going to be able to gain +1. He also is able to quest for 2 as a 4/5. He is a 5 cost that is uninkable, but still, that's going to be pretty solid. And I would also be even curious to see what a bodyguard deck could potentially look like. Even so, it's like, would you even want to start going a little bit more towards a bodyguard Amber Steel style of deck? I mean, that could be very interesting, especially with the bolt combination that you might be able to get going on as well there. That's going to be something to test. Is it going to be great? Time will tell. And then lastly, this is going to be really interesting as well. We're going to be seeing Spaghetti Dinner. You can pay 1, and if you have 2 or more characters in play, gain 1 lore. 1 for 1, that's not necessarily going to be a bad thing at all. And of course, if you do have multiple of these items in play, paying 3, gaining 3, that's not necessarily going to be too bad of a turn. At the same time, it might be something that is a little bit too slow, necessarily, especially with all the removal that is out there. This could very well be, a dead card pretty carefully if you're not able to get 2 characters out, especially in the Amber deck. Just because if they really start getting in trouble with their card draw, then, of course, it's a lot harder for you to be able to gain the needed. Now, Lady and Tramp are going to be very interesting as well, because it's especially, Lady's the 1 cost, Tramp is the 2 cost, and while you have a character named Tramp in play, this character gets +1 for questing. A 1 cost to be able to go here, not bad at all. And then also with that Tramp being able to come in for 1 less if a Lady is in play, that's just going to be a super sick combination right there that you could, totally get going out. Turn 2, get Tramp in. Lady goes ahead and quests for 2, and then, Tramp, whenever you play this character, chosen character of yours gets +1 this turn for each other character that you have in play. So even though, Tramp could be a very great card later in the game as well, especially if you happen to be going wide, especially with something like EA in particular, if you can just go ahead and get this card out and you have 3 or 4 characters out in play, that can be a pretty big game changer, and you can take out something pretty scary with that ability. Now, at the same time, he's a Tramp. Not exactly a great song. Never cared for it, but the card, on the other hand, is a 1 cost, and it is a song, so it can be sung by anything 1 cost or more. And chosen character gets +1 this turn for each character you have in play. Now, again, is that going to be necessarily something that is going to see play? Probably not, but still, it's going to be something worth mentioning. Now, of course, one of the things that we are going to be talking about, and we have, somewhat talked about in the beginning, now it is going to be Bolt. This could be a very good card to be getting into this game. And I mean, he has a great stat line of 3/5 right there. Shift 3. You can ink him if you want. This, I feel, is going to be a really good card and something that is going to be going into, the Amber Steel, even something more so than, the Kitas, or, even, we've seen, some Grumpy Head in there and whatnot. Yeah, so I mean, this is going to be a very good card, something that might even become a staple in pretty much every Amber Steel deck. So, with that being said, it says whenever you ready this character, gain 1 lore for each other undamaged character you have in play. And again, that could go very well with the bodyguards as well, being able to protect your other characters from potentially even taking damage. I mean, and with that, getting that in on turn 3 and then being able to gain 1 lore when you ready this character, that's going to be insane. And then here's the interesting thing, too. You can tap him to banish chosen illusion character. That's interesting. That's something that's worth talking about, especially because, it could very well be. I could almost even see, Amber Steel becoming the top tier 1 deck in this next meta, especially just because of how much support it's getting. And also, like what we saw with the Geyser in particular, you know, Amber Steel very well could be a very dangerous deck. I also, because of this as well, think that we are going to be getting even more illusion characters, and I really think that Jafar also is going to be a very prevalent deck with Amethyst Steel as well. You see the Jafars, we have a lot of really great Jafar support. I could finally see Jafar Wheel actually coming into this meta and sweeping in pretty dominantly. For those of you who don't know what that is the Jafar that is able to gain a lore for each card that you draw. What you do is he's a 7 cost, of course, but then once you get him out and everything, he can even himself go ahead and sing a whole new world. But you can have him sing a whole new world, you discard and draw 7, and then you can pay 5 again, or have another character if you draw another whole new world, and you can discard and draw again, and gain more lore from that and everything like that. And then on top of that, another Jafar being able to come in that has the ability to return illusions that get banished to your hand. That's going to be a great way to be able to go about and recycle these illusions that could be coming in and out of play. And then on top of that, the Jafar 7 cost is a shift. And so you could even go ahead and use that Jafar to get in some good illusion mechanics going, and then just swing in when you're ready with the Jafar shift line, and then just go and wheel for the win. That could be a very possible deck in the future, and something that I'm willing to at least test out. But I mean, this Bolt is going to be absolutely insane, and I'm excited to see how Amber Steel is going to be changing in the future. It's also interesting the rarity on it as well. I'm actually kind of shocked by that. But I mean, it's a good card. I mean, I'm gonna say that this might even be the genie of last set in the sense of hype and utility as well. This is probably going to just be an automatic four of staple in the deck. And so, I mean, other than that, we got a couple of cards that are going to be looking kind of interesting. We got a Pascal for Amber. I mean, this is going to be a great aggro card. We also have another Singer, and he has even Resist +1 and a Singer 4 at a 2 cost. Might be taking over the Ursula as well, and still making it a little bit harder to be able to take out. At the same time, being the 1, just like the Ursula, it might be a good switch just for the resist, but otherwise it's pretty much the same card, nothing too special in that case. And then with this as well, we have the Calhoun. Now, the Shift Calhoun for the Amber Ruby combination is going to be a little bit interesting because there's not necessarily any other ones that are all that great for that color combination that is a Calhoun. So it makes me wonder if we might be getting another Calhoun that might be Amber, might be Red. Time will be able to tell. But especially with, her husband being also in Amber, I'm wondering if there's going to be like a 3 cost or a 2 cost. Probably a 3 cost since we already have a, steel version of Calhoun that's a 2 cost. But that would be my guess. And then whenever this character challenges another character, you may return a racer character from your discard to your hand. So, Racer deck coming into Tier 1, Tier 2. Is it going to still be Rogue? Probably would be my guess, but still, I mean, hey, there's things to look out for. Now, another evasive support with, Amber Green, or Amber Emerald. It is evasive, it does have support as well, so that's not too bad at all. Something to give 3 attack to every single turn while questing for 1. That's not too shabby at all. Now, Restoring the Heart, remove up to 3 damage counters from a character or location, and go ahead and draw a card. Now, that again is going to be an Amber Sapphire, which isn't going to necessarily be all that special, but still going to be something that we can go ahead and get a hold of. Now, this is going to be an interesting one too. I love the Hades here. When you play this character, you may deal 2 damage to a chosen character of yours to banish chosen character with cost 3 or less. Woo-hoo! That is going to be a nice thing. Now, you can, it does say another chosen character, so of course you can't target him. While that would be nice, that's not going to be possible. But with a character with cost 3 or less, that's going to be another Medusa type character. But, would the Medusa necessarily be a little bit better? Yes and no. It depends on course of the meta here, but just a cost of 3 or less for 2 damage upon play is going to be a pretty good card as well. And so I'm going to be curious about that. Now, Cusco, he's evasive. He quests for 2. He's a 4 cost, uninkable. And at the start of your turn, choose one. Each player draws a card, and each player chooses and discards a card. So you really get to kind of choose on how you feel about all of that. Is this going to necessarily be a great card? Probably not, but I just also love the Cusco support, one of my favorite characters in Disney. So I'm going to be kind of curious on to see how this necessarily gets utilized. It's a little tough to be able to say if this card will see play. I necessarily don't think it will. Kind of like our next card, Mufasa, Among the Stars. We have a Shift 5. Now, of course, we don't really have a lower cost Mufasa that's really worth playing necessarily, but he still is evasive. He has resist. He's a 5/7. That's going to be very hard to remove. A quest of 2. Doesn't have really any other actions or anything like that, but he still is a pretty solid card for the 7 cost. Now, of course, at the same time, this color combination does really struggle with card draw, and it does really struggle with sometimes getting up to that 7 ink count. So unless there's a Mufasa shift line that you're going to be worried about or able to utilize, I really don't think that this is going to be all that prevalent in the meta, especially just because, I could see them revealing maybe a 4 cost Mufasa, maybe a 3 cost Mufasa that might be among this color combination. It would have also maybe even been interesting to see this Mufasa be an illusion as well, and I'm kind of surprised that this isn't. I mean, sure, yes, he's among the stars kind of thing, but still, in that retrospective archetype, this very well could be an illusion, but they chose not to go that route, of course, which is fine. No big deal. But anyway, the Duel Links are definitely coming out here. Now, Mad Hatter is going to be an interesting one. Whenever a damaged character challenges another character, you may draw a card. Now, that can be some pretty good utilization. At the same time, he is a 6 cost. He doesn't necessarily have a shift line at all, but that's okay. He still has a great ability at a 3/5 as well. You could really start to utilize him. Whenever a damaged character challenges another character, you may draw a card. So sometimes it is a little bit difficult to get some damage onto your characters and whatnot, especially to the point where they're able to, survive into maybe another attack. But still, it's something to definitely keep in mind. And, Ruby Emerald might be a decent color combination to be able to get things going. Now, this is also going to be interesting, too. You pay 1 less to play characters using their shift ability. And I mean, a 2 cost to be able to start getting your shifts out 1 turn sooner. And it's inkable. So, I mean, that's just a great utilization right there. He is a villain. He is an inventor. He is a 1/2 line, but that's not necessarily anything that you might have to worry about. But again, that's going to be the Emerald Sapphire. That could be a very good color combination. And this is going to be awesome too. Reckless for a 3 cost is a 3/2 and has resist +2 for 3. That's pretty good. I like that. And especially just because he's just going to be a hard hitter for a Ruby Steel deck. That's going to be interesting to be able to see. I'm curious as to what's going to be going on here with that. And then, of course, we got some regular Beast and whatnot. We've seen him already. We know what the card officially says. Now, Lady Cluck. She don't give a cluck. Anyway, with that, she is a bodyguard. Sapphire Steel is a bodyguard. And Ward. So the only way that you can take her out is going to be by literally attacking into her. Is she as nice as the Chimpo? Yes, in a lot of ways, just because of the ward ability. She doesn't do nearly as much damage as him, but she has very healthy willpower to be able to do a lot. And so that could really help go ahead and get the Amethyst Steel line back into this meta, going from, maybe a high tier 2 deck into the tier 1. This is going to be really interesting to help out with that. Now, at the same time, I am still worried about Geyser, just because anything that has ramp to help you get ahead blurple and things of that nature could very well be shut down a lot easier than it has in the past. But still, guys, go ahead and let me know what you think about these announcements. What cards are you most excited about? And more so, what kind of decks are you looking forward to testing the most? What decks are also maybe going to be making a move into the Tier 1 meta? Go ahead and let me know down in the comments below, and until next time, have a good one.